All right, I'm only at 25%. So worst comes to worst, I'll just switch my mic out. You just won't hear me talking as much unless it's like super.
I think we'll be all right. So, all right, I hit record.
Computer problems. All
right. Welcome to the Iron Breed podcast. My name is Austin, and here with me again today is Gerard.
What's going on, everyone?
So today we're going to do our first. This is the first for the Iron Breed podcast, and I'm super, super excited about it. So we're doing our first ever interview, and the first person that we ever have as a guest on the Iron Breed podcast is going to be Eric Schwartz. So some of you listening to this, you're already going to know Schwartz, but for those of you who don't, I'm going to take a second to introduce him. Eric graduated from Bloomsburg University. He is a former Marine and probably one of my favorite people I've ever met. So I'm extremely, I can't even tell you, I was telling people going up to this podcast, like, you're going to love this interview that we're doing because Schwartz is just an awesome guy and he's got so much good stuff to say. And I think everybody's going to learn a whole lot from this. So I'm really excited. So without further ado, Eric, am I missing anything? I mean,
no, man, thank you so much. I appreciate the introduction.
So, to go over a little bit of your background, I know that you started at SHIP and I've heard it through other people, but I've never heard it directly through you. When people talk about your time at SHIP, they say that you was it something like majored in girls and beer or something along those lines?
Yeah. When I first went to Bloom, I got interviewed by some people that from my hometown that were kind of got word that I was back at school playing ball. And they asked, what happened. And I told them, I said, I tried to major in beer, girls, and football. And so that was just always kind of that's what I would say.
Yeah. So how did that end up leading you to the Marines? So for those who don't know, Schwartz went from playing football at Shippensburg to joining the Marines to coming back to playing football at Bloomsburg University. So we're just going to kind of take the time to outline this kind of path that you went on and like everything that you learned, because I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I could really talk all types of stuff about it, but really it all started. I had a scholarship to SHIP. Great school, great setup. I was really happy to be there. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't playing. I was going to get redshirted, and I wasn't necessarily a contributor for the team, which as an athlete who's been kind of like the guy for a team, it's a difficult transition. And then another part of it up at school was I was never a very good student, always distracted, didn't really know how to study, got through high school because it was easy. And when I got up to school, and I won't want to say I wasn't invested in the team, but because my performance at practice or whatever wasn't on Saturdays and I wasn't a big contributor, I just got really lax. And I think a lot of people were surprised by it because they knew me in high school. I was a very driven, motivated guy and didn't drink, didn't use drugs, none of that. So then when I went to SHIP and like the whole dynamic changed, I wasn't a contributor. School wasn't easy, split with my high school sweetheart, the whole deal. It was just like, okay, I'm going to try, drinking, going out, partying, living college life. And it just was a rabbit hole. And it was, I had a blast, but I look back at it, it was the best mistake I ever made because it basically turned me into who I am today. And had I not failed out, wouldn't have had an opportunity to serve our country and wouldn't have had a chance to play at Bloom, which, wouldn't have met you. So
I know,
it all works out.
It's always so crazy. So why the Marines? Obviously there's so many different branches. So what was your thought process upon leaving Shippensburg that made you think the Marines, this is it, this is what I'm going to do?
So I knew I wanted to do a branch. I wasn't going to do like a special forces or officer candidate school or anything like that. I knew I honestly didn't do a ton of homework either. I'm pretty just like, when I set my mind to do something, it's just like, let's get it done. So I wanted to make a choice sooner rather than later. And I knew a guy growing up. It was actually my girlfriend in high school's brother, and he was a Marine. And I always looked up to him. His name's Ryan Zuver. He's a trainer in York as well. Just an awesome guy. And so in a way, I really looked up to him, just kind of how he was. He's just a guy's guy. And when I knew he was in the Marines, it was just like, if I want to be like that, that's the type of, unit I want to be with. And from what he told me, like they take care of their own and there's no man left behind type deal. And it's pretty serious brotherhood. So choosing between that, that was a known entity in a way because I had talked to him. But yeah, it just felt right. Didn't even go into a Navy office or an Army office. It was just Marine office. I want to do infantry. When can you get me out of here for boot camp?
Wow.
Dang, yeah, I was gonna ask real quick, what were some of those initial like shock factors? You've just gone from this, this period, the state at university, you've made this shift from like how you used to be in high school to someone maybe you aren't necessarily comfortable with in college, and then boom, you're showing up at Paris Island, right? And you're in the Marine Corps. It's like how big of a shock factor was that?
I wouldn't necessarily call it a big shock factor. It was just, I knew that who I was and the kind of the path that I was going down was not, I wasn't living up to my potential at all. Because after I failed out of school, I would tell everybody like, yeah, I'm going to community college. I'm going to transfer back up and finish and play and it'll be all good. But really I wasn't in school. I was just working, drinking on the weekends, just kind of being a clown. And I was like, dude, I need to sink my teeth into something and get going. And it just, honestly, it seemed like a good, 4 years or however long it was going to take me to just like get squared away. And also, I knew I disappointed my parents. So in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, this is a way for me to sort of do something that I'm doing something productive. I'm not just standing still and I'm not going to work, the same job in York County for the rest of my life. Just was something that, I felt I needed to do, to reach my potential.
So obviously, you hear a lot of stories about everything that goes on in the military and even just what people learn in their time in there. And, so I think like some of my biggest questions is I've never served in the military. My youngest brother does, but I know, like, what was that experience like for you? What did that teach you, and like kind of how did that transform you?
So going in, I was 21 when I enlisted. And so we all have been newly 21 and we know kind of what goes on with that. So going in the Marines, like having that structure, and as an athlete your whole life, you always have a purpose behind what you're doing. So you're in the weight room and you're working out and doing XYZ, but in the back of your mind, it's for the season. It's all in preparation. So, and you have that like structured schedule that I think a lot of athletes, like we crave that. It's just kind of, we need constant stimulus. We need something to be working on or working towards. So it kind of, in a way, replaced the team atmosphere of being an athlete and being on a team and being a contributor. And in a way, the Marines is kind of an ultimate team sport, where your buddies rely on you, you rely on them. So it was really, it wasn't a huge transition for me. It was, I kind of fit into it. Obviously different theater than sports, but the biggest change was just I had an opportunity to grow up in a structured setting. So being 21 and then got out when I was 25, those 4 years, I was able to grow up and mature while kind of having the U.S. government with their thumb on me, where I can go here, I can go there, and you're going here and you're wearing this. And so it was a good time to grow up and kind of in a space where I had a lot of responsibility to my commitment. So I couldn't really fuck up and be an idiot,
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the most important thing. It allowed me to grow up while under like a controlled sort of setting.
Yeah. That's
No,
definitely
yeah, absolutely. That's like it's very interesting. Like that we hear a lot of times, like athletes go through this period, especially when you stop being an athlete or you stop having that routine and schedule. I find a lot of individuals seem to lose this purpose or this drive towards working towards something. So as you transferred out of the Marine Corps, did you notice challenges adapting into just your everyday life? How were you able to then kind of take that, oh, this is what I'm working for, this is the achievement, this is the goal, this is the mission type mindset, and approach it towards what you're working on right now?
Well, I think a lot of times I get, I don't want to say frustrated, that's not the right word, but when people accredit my temperament and my like, oh, you're jacked, dude. The Marines did that for you, and I'm like, no, Marines did not do this for me. They made me run and do X, Y, and Z, but like it was my time that I put in. Or, oh man, you're so structured, you're so regimented. Did the Marines do that? I'm like, no, that's a choice. You don't have to be that. I mean, they definitely, instilled some of that in me, but sometimes I get frustrated when the Marines kind of get credit for the person that I kind of chose to be. But the the biggest thing, like transitioning from the Marines, like it wasn't a huge culture shock for me to come back into society. I wasn't really mentally, didn't have any issue with it. But we kind of had talked about this prior to when we started recording, was like just taking the positive from things. So through my experiences in the Marine Corps, saw and experienced some things that are extremely challenging, and people have PTSD with them. I mean, there's guys I served with that have taken their lives and aren't with us today because of, things that they had struggled with after they got out of the Marine Corps. But for me, I took all the positive. When I think about my buddy Penny that passed away, I don't think about him in a negative light. I don't think about, oh man, that was such a traumatic thing. I think about, I'm here, I'm here, and I'm going to live not only for my memory or for me to reach my potential, but I'm going to live for him. And that's a positive outlook on it. I'm not going to, drink beers and, cry about it every day. It's just, I'm here, and I got to, capitalize on what I need to do, not just for me, but for him, because he's not here. He doesn't have the chance. So for me, it's always taking that positive out of negative situations. And then coming back and transitioning to regular life wasn't that difficult. It's like nothing's as hard as some of that stuff you go through. At times, even for football games, you talk to me or take my pulse before the game, and I'm chilling. I'm just hanging out. My pulse isn't up. It's just, a lot of football players can, compare games to war and whatever else. But for me, it's like, I'm just going out there to do my job. My pulse doesn't, I mean, Austin knows me pretty well. I'm a pretty laid back, chill guy. And I think it's due to been through some shit. So it's like, this is all just gravy. I could have been that guy that stepped on the ID and isn't here today, but I'm not. So this is all just bonus.
Yeah, I think the most important part about that is your outlook and your mindset on stuff. And I think that's such a good example of why you are so successful and why, why what you're doing is working, because, you mentioned it's a choice. Every day you're making a choice. And one of the things that we constantly keep harping on is that you make a choice every day. You make this choice to do the right thing, to work on being better. I mean, because you could have very easily came back and said, oh man, all this stuff that I just went through really sucked. And you could have just let that take everything and just spin your whole life into, I don't know. I mean, definitely not anywhere close to what you are right now. And, I think that's just such an important reminder that every day you make a choice.
There's
to have the
I mean,
life
there
you
was a
want.
ton of different paths that I, could have taken, but obviously staying busy was huge for me. I think I got out of the Marine Corps I got home on a Friday. I had off Saturday. I met with a guy on Sunday, and I started working on Monday.
Wow.
I mean, 48 hours I was already, doing landscaping with the guy. Just, wanted something to do. Sitting around is just not for me. Got to constantly be moving forward and doing something. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the mindset thing, and I'm not trying to compare my mindset to this individual, but watching The Last Dance, I mean, you talk about Jordan and his mindset, and that's what set him apart. Obviously, his physical abilities are incredible, completely gifted, but some of that shit where he's talking about, he's making stuff up in his head. Like he said, good game to me after that. Like, I'm going to drop 40 in the first half. Like that's the mental edge that separates real highly successful people, I think. I mean, there's people out there that get lucky and, kind of are dipped in shit and find something, but there's those people that are just have that mindset and can continue to push forward, and that's the edge. That's where you are different, that different breed, that different type of person than other people.
Yeah, absolutely. So you ended up getting into coaching, and you coach athletes now. So where did you kind of realize that was the path that you wanted to go, and that was the direction that you wanted to go? I mean, I remember there were periods of time when we would talk at the desk and at Bloomsburg, and you were talking about wanting to do different internships or learning different stuff. I mean, but I never really knew, like, when did you decide, like, yeah, I think this is like really what I want to do?
Well, I knew I wanted to do exercise science. So when I chose Bloom, it was between Bloom, East Stroudsburg, and I think Westchester were schools that I applied to and eventually was accepted to. But I knew I wanted to do exercise science, and I knew I wanted to do something in the fitness realm. And so I've never been someone who's highly motivated by money, because when I did talk to people, they were like, don't do that. There's no money in that and whatever. But the whole idea of being a personal trainer was never, I don't necessarily dislike that term, but a personal trainer to me is I don't want to sit there and count someone's reps. But I think the big shift for me was that I felt I had something more to offer than just the physical aspect of it. Like, being that I had failed out of school, now I can share that information with the kids I work with and be like, don't walk in these footsteps, and don't do what I did. Don't make the mistakes I did. So I have that's something that I have that other coaches don't have. And I think I just knew that my skill set and like kind of like what I'm bringing to the table, I felt like that would be my best way to serve or to help other people. And I think that's kind of what it's all about if you're a coach. It's less about the dollars and cents and more about like how many lives you touch as far as who you're working with and what you do for them.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We see that a lot, especially, me and Austin have talked about in our coaching experiences, especially with, you know, athletes, football players. Just, it's so much more than just the weight room. It's so much more than what you do out in the field. It's that perspective that you're able to give somebody when they're going through a tough situation, when they're handling something that's outside of that realm, that's going to affect, how their performance, how their training is going on, or just their overall state of life. So I think you mentioned, you said one word, service. That's huge, man. Like, you'll never work a day in your life if that's like truly the mindset you believe in. Like, that's really cool to hear from someone, because you don't hear that much these days. You always hear, what's about that check? How am I going to cash that bill? And so to see that you're truly doing this out of the joy and passion of your heart, that's how you know you're providing a service that is truly worthwhile to these individuals.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously, it's a business and you need to make money at it, but the feeling of cashing a check, as opposed to that feeling when a kid does something that they couldn't do and now they can do, and you get that high five, or you see their confidence grow, or you see them changing into
can't
a
beat it.
better version of themselves, there's nothing fucking more rewarding than that. It's just like, dude, it's I get choked up almost talking about it, because it's like, they talk about living your dash. You know, you're born this date and you dash, and this is when you die, like live your dash. Well, that's going to be the legacy that I think that I want to leave behind, is these people that I'm trying to help. And it's important to me. And if, you know, I think if you're in this industry and you're just trying to cash checks, it's just,
You don't last long.
well, you might not, right. You might not last long, but you're kind of muddying the water as far as like what I think this job is really all about.
No, absolutely. I mean, I feel like in this industry, when you don't truly care, that does get exposed to some degree. You know, and then usually it just gives everybody else a bad look, because somebody will hire Joe Blow coach who's just trying to pay his bills. I mean, you know, no offense, we all got to do what we got to do to pay our bills. But when you don't actually truly care and you're just there,
Yep.
you know, it's a whole different level of experience, and just even service level wise.
Yeah. And I mean, I know, and there's times when I have some studs that I work with.
Oh,
and
for sure.
On my page, I'll post pictures of them. But what I kind of take pride in is, if you work with me, like, I'm going to take pictures of you working out, and you're going to go on the page, because that's kind of the generation we're in. They like to see themselves on there. But I'm never just pumping up my most athletic people. Whether you're, no matter what level you are, I'm invested in you, and I care about you and your improvement. And so it's like, I'm trying to give that same type of motivation and care for everybody, and not just the studs. Because you see some people's Instagram, it's all about, oh, that dude's jacked, I'm gonna take a picture of him. But what about the kid who, you know, doesn't have a college athletic career ahead of him? He's gonna go into the business world and, you know, work a 9 to 5 and do XYZ. But like, what, those people are as important as those studs. I mean, that's just kind of my mindset on it. It's like, I just want to make everyone feel like that inclusive community and benefit everybody.
I love that, man. I love to hear that, because you see it a lot, especially when we go back to Joe Blow trainer, for example. It's, you know, yeah,
That gets a bad rap. Joe Blow
right?
gets a bad rap.
Joe Blow's a
Poor
bad
guy.
coach,
I'm
man.
sure if he's real, I'm so sorry. I just
That
think
dude's
it's
got all the
sorry, Joe Blow.
certifications.
he probably does. He probably has more degrees than I do.
Yeah.
Right. But no, yeah, you can tell the difference, and a client can tell the difference when, you know, you're selling them a cookie cutter program, or you're selling them something just because it's you know, going to make ends meet, or if you're just checking your watch, checking your phone to get through a session.
Dude. Yep.
And that's a pet peeve of mine. Like, I would see trainers do that, and I was like that client's not going to come back on Monday. And sure enough, that client misses their session. And you set yourself up for that, as like, you have to be invested in these individuals. And that's so huge, because whether you hit a 700-pound squat PR, or it's your first time getting to depth with a barbell, both for the individual are just as big a deal.
It's all relative. Exactly.
It's all relative. Exactly, man. That's really, really cool to hear from you. So as you're transferring into fitness, and so you're at Bloomsburg, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You realize that you want to pursue exercise science. What makes you kind of think along the lines, all right, I want to start my own business? Because that in itself is a bold venture of its own. And how have you navigated those waters and challenges?
So I did an internship with a company here in Harrisburg, Explosive Sports Performance. And it was with a guy that I trained with prior to going up to Bloom. So when I knew that I was going to Bloom, and I knew I was going to try to play football, I would drive up to my buddy's apartment every Thursday night. We'd watch Thursday night football, and then I'd wake up at 5 a.m. on Friday and go work out with Dave. And then I'd drive back down and go to school in York. And I would do that on Sundays then, and we would do it Monday morning. So I would train with Dave Friday mornings and Monday mornings. And so when it came time to get into the business, he was the type of guy that I wanted to work with. So I did my internship with him for the summer. And I basically lived at the gym. I mean, I think I got my hours within half the time I was supposed to. I was just there all the time, and I loved it. I was soaking it all up. And then he said, "Would you want to stay for the rest of the summer?" And I had already made a commitment to go back to Bloom and work at the rec. So I was like, "Well, can I split time?" So did that. Drove back and forth from Bloom to his place, and then he's like, "When you graduate, you have a job here. We'd love to have you." And he sat down and showed me numbers and percentages, and I didn't give a fuck. I was like, "Yes, I want to work here. Absolutely." Jim has an awesome culture. He's an awesome human being. And started working with him once I graduated. Like, I didn't even walk for graduation. I think I finished my last final on like a Wednesday, and I had already had a place down here for my girlfriend. Drove down, was there at 6 a.m. Thursday morning working. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to. It just was that gym. There's something really special about that place, and I still feel that way. But working for him, I was running the West Shore facility for him. It's actually the building that I'm in right now as for myself. Worked for him for about a year and a half. And as time went on, I wasn't feeling like I was being compensated appropriately. So the entire time I worked for him, I was still working at Trogs. I was still working as a bar back, actually, putting glasses away and grinding. And basically just to make ends meet. And I was just like, this is not it. Like, I know what I have to offer, and I know what I'm getting paid. And it's just like, what can we do? So we started having a few conversations about what I can do to make more money. And it ended up kind of being a discussion of like, there's nothing I can do for you. And I don't know if I'm not really sure how exactly it happened, but it was like that, this situation's not going to work. So at that point in time, I had to leave. So I called around any job that I knew I could get right away. And I knew I've done landscaping before. So boom, got a job landscaping, gave my 2 weeks notice and said, "I'm sorry. I love working here, but I just can't, I can't live off of this." As much as I was working, I just wasn't making enough money. So I had to leave and do the landscaping for 3 months. So I left all my clients, which was hard to do. When I did leave, I wrote up a report on every one of them. And it included, where they were at lifting wise, what motivated them, personality traits, just whoever handed over to, I wanted them to have as much information about the kids as possible. And then as time went on, still was kind of scratching by money wise, but some of the kids and the guy who owns the building I rent from reached out to me and said, "Would you have any interest in coming back into training?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't really have the money for it. I don't have the time. I'm working XYZ." And then finally I was just like, "Dude, this is like what you're meant to do." And I was at a football game at Camp Hill, and one of my kids that I used to work with was playing, and his mom was there, and she goes, "Were you doing any training? You back to training at all yet?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "Just working right now." She's like, I really feel like that's what you're supposed to do." It was kind of like a comment in passing, but it stuck with me. And it was Cynthia Massey. So shout out Cynthia Massey. She said that, and that was kind of the catalyst for like, fuck, Eric, like look in the mirror, like this is what you need to do. This is what you're not necessarily on this planet for, not to get crazy, but like that's what you're passionate about. Like do it. So basically had a couple resistance bands, a barbell, some weights, fucking nothing. And was just like, all right, dude, let's do it. And started renting the room, started with 4 clients that I had from the previous company I worked for. 2 were the guy who owns the building's children. And then 2 were my OGs, the Eckerts, Bella and Ethan, who I still work with today. They're the best. That family has done so much for this company getting off the ground. But just basically was like, this is what I need to do, and I'll figure it out as I go. And that was that.
I love it. And there's so much about that kind of embodies so much of what we're trying to promote, that really is just when you know what it is that you got to do, instead of worrying about how you're going to make it happen, just make it happen.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brian Olsrud. He's a strongman competitor. He has a gym in Maryland. He's been on Untamed Strength's page and Zat Strength's page, but he says the world has a way of moving out of the way for people who know where they're going.
Yep.
And I kind of believe that. Like, if you just put your head down and you have a goal and a vision and you drive towards it, things will work out, and like things that are issues will work themselves out of the way. And so I think just motivated people, sometimes you just set your mind to it and just make it happen. And being passionate about it is like the fuel for that.
Yeah. Well, how many athletes, because I know that you train primarily high school athletes for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many athletes? I know I've always seen you posting them. I don't know if you know off the top of your head, how many of them have signed to like go play in college? Because it has to be a lot, because I've seen.
Yeah, I have a girl who's going to Rider University in New Jersey. It's a Division I volleyball program, Emma. I have another Emma who's going to play field hockey at Louisville. Another girl playing volleyball in Susquehanna. I think that's it as far as college commits. But yeah, I mean, I have a lot of kids that have a ton of potential, but again, like back to what we were talking about earlier, like it's not all about the studs, it's like about everybody and benefiting everyone for that stuff that they're going to face later in life, because maybe they're not going to play in college, but it's as important as those people going to play D1.
So how do you market yourself? Like, what sets you apart from other coaches, especially in this area? I know the central Pennsylvania area isn't like a super huge area as far as it's like independent coaching and like, athlete, especially with athletes, one-on-one athlete coaching. But what sets you apart? Like, what makes your training different than, going to your local gym and hiring the personal trainer, Joe Blow again?
I think one of the main things that my dog is like sneezing his ass off over there. Are you okay? One of the main things that sets me apart is that I train and I look the part, and it's a simple thing, but it does. Thanks, bro. It's a simple thing, and it's not. I don't say that in a way of like, look how much I lift or whatever, but people in this industry, I feel like, or kids will listen to you more if you look like it. I mean, I know I've had coaches in the past that, don't eat healthy, don't work out, don't look the part. So taking advice from them is sometimes difficult. So I think that is one thing, is just sort of like, I live the life. I work out more than a lot of people. So I'm not just saying what you're supposed to do, I'm living it. But as far as like what I do, I think I'm really fun. I keep my training very fun. Kids have a good time in there. Because I think it's important, especially for the youth population, if they come in and they enjoy it. I mean, there's a certain point where I need to push them and be a dick about stuff for their own benefit. But if they have fun and they continue to come back because they enjoy it, they're going to get more out of it, rather than if I push them too much and try to be a dick, then they don't like it and then they don't benefit from the training. So I think that's a huge thing. But then also every athlete I work with, I break down what sport they're in. So for volleyball athletes, I got to look at the injuries involved with that. That's always kind of where I start with their programming, is like, what injuries are a high prevalence in that sport. So football, concussions. So for my football guys, I got to work on the neck. I got to protect the shoulders. I got to this. So that's kind of centric in their programming outside of other general strength development. So a lot of coaches will talk about what's the most important thing in your program. Oh, injury prevention. But they won't have them do a fucking warm up. And it's like, how is that conducive for injury prevention when you're not even having them warm up? Like, you're just throwing them onto the bar and they're putting 135 on. So I think, I have my own way of doing things, and, I may be right, maybe wrong, but I think that's the big thing that sets me apart, is like my programming is true to keeping the kid healthy and making them a better athlete as far as on the field. But then, like we talked about, the other stuff is their confidence and just working with them and developing them as a human being.
Yeah, and that plays a central role too, especially when you talk about a youth athlete. Me and Austin have mentioned in a couple previous podcasts just what that was like when we were young and going through sports, and the injuries we accrued to them as well, and due to a lot of it being from lack of education and proper training regime. So it also goes back to what we talked about. There is no one true training style, but being able to actually identify what the youth athlete is going through and setting them up, like get them in a better position to also be aware, like, hey, these are the injuries you're more likely to accrue as you maybe go through this sport. So be mindful of this. This is important because that value on prehab, rehab, mobility, warm up of an actual routine was never really stressed, was never really ingrained. And so being able to get that in a young mind and put a place of value right there, dude, man, you're planting seeds. So even if they drift away from sports, they may realize like, oh, okay, I remember Schwartz talked about this. I gotta listen to Schwartz. Like
Mm-hmm.
it puts value on what you're teaching them. And I remember with a lot of my youth athletes, it's tough to get them like focused, especially the young ones. Like what's your youngest youth athlete you have?
I think the youngest one I have right now is going into 6th grade. So he's in 5th grade right now.
Right. So it's a young one. And it's
That's
easy.
Ethan.
Like,
That's Ethan. That's one of my OGs.
Yeah, right. Their bodies move funny. They're trying to figure out how to use things like still. And that's a big challenge in the two is getting that little mind to stay on task, on focus, try to keep good form throughout all of the reps and see the value in what they're doing. And so by placing such an emphasis at such a young age, you're ingraining and setting up these young minds for a lifetime of beneficial information. And so that plays a huge factor into what you're doing, what trying to work with them. Now, you had mentioned before you were at kind of a pivotal crossroad with your business, and we had mentioned different coaching styles, and you chose whether to go the traditional route of getting, a certification or to invest further into your own business. And I would love to hear you talk about this more because this is a challenging thing in our industry. And especially when we talk about, recognition or labels next to a name, a lot of it is based around like, oh, well, what's your cert? What's your certification? What's your title you hold? And does that really mean that you are all about the information? Does that? So tell us a little more about that process you went through.
Yeah. So at the time when I started the business, I already had my bachelor's in exercise science, but to spend the money and the weekend and the time to get the CSCS, it didn't necessarily make sense. A lot of the people I talked to were just like, yeah, dude, it's just a check in the box. It's just to have it. It's just to put it on your resume. And for me, it was just like, is this really worth my investment and time just to say that I have it? Now I'll preface this by saying eventually I do plan to get it done, but it just didn't make a lot of sense at the time. I knew what I was doing. I knew how to program, and I don't feel like that hinged on whether I had a cert or not. Because I've known, and I don't know, maybe you guys have two people that have, an alphabet list of certifications, but don't know shit about training, look like shit, don't treat people well. I'm not saying that's everybody, but I'm saying there are people out there like that. And I think sometimes it gets a little too, saying you have a cert. I can go on the weekend and show up and sleep through the presentation and then take the test and pass and have a cert. But is that really benefiting me? Is it benefiting my clients? Is it benefiting what I'm trying to do? So, and we had talked about, I'm starting to have a little bit of a shift with some of my volleyball girls with the Olympic lifting. And that's something I need to know more about and I need to sink my teeth into more. So I've reached out to a couple of people to not only shadow, but I do plan to get a certification through that. So that way I know what the hell I'm doing more precisely, and I have those coaching cues in the back of my head, know how to communicate stuff better. So now it's, I guess the choice of certifications is more specific to build the business and benefit my clients directly.
Well, and that's, and that kind of, also even leads into, you're an exercise science major. We were both exercise science. Everybody in this chat is exercise science. And here we are trying to run businesses. And now that's hard. Like we said, like taking business classes probably would have helped a whole lot. I'm sure. I look back on that frequently. Hell, we filed our taxes and, we talk about every day, damn, wish we realized we could have like wrote this off. You laugh,
Yeah.
but it's like looking at it now.
Bro, yeah. Yep.
I look at what my tax return was for this year after we filed them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so dumb. How did I not realize it? But that's one of those things, you don't know that until you learn that the hard way.
Yep.
So like,
and let me ask you this. Let me ask both of you this. When you think about your education as a whole, everything where you're at, what percentage is the exercise science? So what part of your degree is really your foundation of knowledge? Did it have more to do with that, your experience, your internships, your time in the gym? Like, where do you draw most of your information from?
Jared, answer this first.
I'll go first because Austin's going to go off on this, and we've had many topics talked about this. Without a doubt, like, I truly value my degree and what it taught me and effort, but I truly think that it came from outside experience, internships, and putting into actual application. I'm with you as well, where I found it frustrating and troublesome that you go 4 years through a college degree and you get out into the work world and you'll get denied job positions because you don't have a certification behind your name. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't then go get those and do what you need to do to get those jobs? No, go ahead, go for it. But why are we devaluing the 4 years that we just put in? And when it's really coming from the actual experience, the actual outside research that we're doing and putting into practice. So Austin, let it rip.
Oh man, I talk about, this is about to be a storm of super unpopular opinions, but I feel very passionately about this. How much do I attribute what I've learned at school, or what? Okay, this is actually probably the best question. People, when I tell them I make supplements, they're like, "Oh, where'd you learn how to do that? What's your major in school?" Guess what? Nothing I learned in college taught me how to do that. That was me doing it on my own. Almost everything that I know and I do was me doing it in an internship or learning it on my own. Okay, I learned anatomy and physiology, like advanced physiology in college. Great. But outside of that, looks at student loans real quick. Oh, what value for what I put in? Excuse me? I don't know. I'm sorry. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to completely shit on it. I do think, positioning wise, me being like starting out at Lock Haven helped me out with getting certain connections to get to certain places internship wise. Now, granted, I had to like forge those roads on my own. I had to take those shots and hope they work out. But then getting into grad school at Bloom, that's super pivotal. I wouldn't be where I am right now if I didn't go to Bloom, because if I don't go to Bloom, I don't meet Rudy, who's my current boss and at Cenogenics, because he's a former Bloom grad. I don't meet him if I don't go to Bloom. I don't get to Bloom if Dr. Hiley, who was my advisor, wasn't so close with Dr. Andriacci, and him being like writing me an awesome, and if you're listening to this, Dr. Hiley, you're the man and I love you for this. Thank you for writing me such an awesome recommendation letter to go to Bloomsburg, because I didn't have a GPA to get in, because I didn't take my first 2 years of undergrad seriously. So I didn't have the right GPA to actually get into Bloomsburg for grad school. It came down to that recommendation letter and me having a pretty solid resume outside of that for the certifications and internships. So thankfully I was proactive on that. But then getting to grad school, outside of like, other than my positioning of being at Bloomsburg to meet Rudy, to go to Cenegenics, to then do well enough at that internship where they wanted to hire me on full, like, you know, bring me into DC and then now or Dallas and then DC. Other than that, it didn't do anything. So yeah, I mean, that was a really long-winded answer, but I just feel so passionately about, like, just because you think you want to do better in something doesn't necessarily mean school. Now, obviously, yes, you want to be a doctor, you need to go to med school. If you want to be a physical therapist, you need to go to PT school. Like, some of those things are like certainly non-negotiable, but like there's so much stuff that you can learn that you don't need to go to school just to learn.
Mhm.
And I mean, I don't know. That's just,
That's like the quote from Good Will Hunting, where he's like, yeah, you're going to realize two things. He's like, one, don't do that. Two, you could have got that knowledge for $1.50 in late fees from the library. It's just, it is what
I
it is.
love that.
yes, that's such a great movie too.
You like apples?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
but I think that's so true, and it speaks volumes too to the kind of age we live in, where we have so much just abundant sources of information where you can. So I see where certifications, yes, we're trying to make sure it's set in one way, it's accredited, it lines up with the values that they're instilling, but also at the same time, the individuals that do go out and get those, that don't put that knowledge into application and just expect, oh, I now have this title attached to my name. It doesn't work like that. I think one of the most frustrating things I ever saw was strength coaches who did everything they needed to do. I've learned it, and that's it. They don't continue to learn. And that speaks into so many volumes in so many areas. Like, the day you stop learning is the day your brain starts dying. It starts turning off. And so it's a constant search for outside information and articles and practical application of all of it. And so, Schwartz, what are some things? Austin told me that you have an interesting philosophy towards speed training, and I would love to get a little nitty gritty with some of our actual like training stuff. But what are some ways and applications you approach training for individuals trying to develop speed?
So when I worked for Dave Brixius at Explosive Sports Performance, his way that he teaches speed is something that I've adopted. And now a lot of people, if you go to like that Parisi speed school, you'll go and it'll be like a linear day of speed and then like a lateral day of speed. And it's all broken down into like, go to this cone, come back to this one. Well, my stuff's a lot more interactive with, and this is all through Dave's, I've adopted it, but it's all through kind of like Dave's creation. So Coach Bricks is awesome at this. I think I spend a lot more time like writing. He knows all this stuff. For me, I have to sit down and kind of like, how am I going to set this up? So I set it up a little bit differently, but to get down to it, it's a lot of reaction. So when you play a game, especially let's just use football for an instance, if I'm coming up to make a tackle and a guy makes a move on me, I have to react to him and I have to take the right angle. If I just have you work with cones and go to a cone and cut and come back here, you're going to develop some level of control and balance. But if I make you react to another human being, not only are they getting better at making a move, but you're getting better at reacting at it. So there's that aspect of it. But then also there's a lot of cognitive stuff that I do. So I may have them do something to get their feet active. So maybe like a pogo hop. And then I'll call out a color. Well, they have to identify that color and identify the direction that I assigned it to. Or then I'll do a shape and then maybe a brand of clothing or something. So they have to remember what side is this color, shape, object, and the other side is these other three objects. So then they have to react to that and make a decision. I use tons of different stimulus with it. So number one, it doesn't get boring because there's just infinite things that I can do with it. It's not just, okay, we're going to run sprints and build speed. It's a lot more fun. And then the football guys I work with, they love it. They love to compete. If I just have them compete the whole practice, I'll get so much more out of them because they just want to fucking grind. They just want to challenge each other and talk shit. So I'll have them do a lot of chase games where one guy will be in front of the other one. The guy in front is trying not to get tugged. The guy behind him is trying to catch him. And you think about that aspect of when you're in a sport and you're running down the sideline, you know someone's about to come and tackle you, you find that extra gear. So when I can implement that in training, you know, because building speed, maximal speed, is about, you got to put out max effort. If you're trying to get faster and you're only giving it 80%, you're not going to develop that speed. So when you add that implement of chasing and that stimulus of trying not to get caught, you find that extra gear. Just by proxy, it's just how the drill's set up. You can't cheat it, because if you get tug, it's instant feedback, number one, that you're going too slow. And then for the other guy, it was instant feedback that I'm faster than that guy, and you're pushing each other. So the kids love it. I work with 2 football teams in the area, and it's probably it's probably my favorite thing I do. I'll have to say that. But the speed training is just, man, it's so much fun. Like when you get the guys hooping and hollering and the music's bumping and they're just like loving the training. Like sometimes I don't even want to give them like a water break, because it's like we got the level right here. I don't want to give them a break and have them come back and be, you know what I mean? But it's just a blast. I love it, and I get juiced up when we do it.
Well, you've been doing like workouts, like coaching for local high schools, football programs, right?
Yeah. So a local school, Redland High School, hired me as their football strength coach. Was running their program up until the quarantine started. So we worked together for about 2 months, and then we had to put it on break. I've been sending at-home workouts to them that they could follow. Man, that was a blast. And then maybe a month after Redland hired me, another school, Cumberland Valley, guy I played with actually at Ship when I was there. He's the head coach at Cumberland Valley now, Josh Oswalt. He hired me, and another Marine. Actually, he runs the strength program. Shout out Sarge. He does the strength side of it, and then I do the speed. So they have 2 coaches basically that go there. But obviously that had to stop when the quarantine started. But yep.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's huge too. I mean, you know, you've been branching out into more. I know, how have you been going about getting your clientele? Because I know, like, you know, back to the building a business, like what sort of things have you learned in this process? Because you've had you've been doing Focus now for a little over a year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
obviously in that year that you've been doing that, you've been acquiring new clients. What things have you done that you're like, okay, I can reflect back and be like, yeah, okay, that's not working, I got to change it up? Or what things are you like, all right, this is good, I need to do better with this, or get better with this, or keep doing well?
So one main thing is I was in a state of mind where no matter what I was asked, no matter what type of athlete you are, what level of fitness you are, if you asked me for something, the answer was yes. If you needed a workout program, oh, my shoulder hurts, and oh, dude, I'll send you some stuff for it, no problem. I'm just trying to lose some weight and get back. I'll send you a program. Like, no matter what I was asked to do, I said yes. And I think that was important just because it gave me experience. It exposed me to just different things, and it just kept me active. But the main way I've added clients is through kind of like working with the teams is huge, because that's kind of a large group that you're working with. That's something that you can put on the schedule to do these nights. And then from there, that's kind of a filter program. So that's the idea behind it. If I work with a football team and there's a guy that needs a little bit extra work, maybe then I can bring him into the room I have and work with him on the side. So it's kind of working with the teams not only gets me a foot in the door with the school to then work with other teams, but then I can start to pull some of those athletes in for more individualized training with me. But the building I work out of is a sports center that has multiple teams through it. And the guy who owns it runs Fusion Volleyball. It's a club volleyball team that my girl Emma plays for, his daughter Abby plays for. I have a couple more athletes that play for them too. They make up the majority of my athletes I work with in the room. And the word of mouth thing and like how I treat the kids, and I've been so fortunate because I don't have any kids that are like, I have no problem kids at all. Everybody works hard, everyone shows up, has a great attitude. But like, I have like the best clientele in the room. And I'm not just saying that. Like when they're there, I mean, if you come into the room and you meet the kids, they're all like just really good kids. And I think it comes from them spreading the word to them. It's just like who you surround yourself with is kind of like a reflection of you. And so my kids, like they tell their cousin, and then their cousin comes in and he's a great kid. And then they tell a teammate and she's a great kid. It's just like that environment. I'm trying to cultivate that and keep it going for if you do come in and maybe you are a little bit of a knucklehead, like you buy in because these kids are all bought in. But honestly, I've just been super fortunate. The kids are just money. So I've been lucky with that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I don't think it's live. Well, it'll be live by the time that we launch this, but we filmed a Mindset Monday about you are the people that you surround yourself with. And I think that's so true. And I also think a lot of it is probably how you set the environment. You create an environment, you create that environment. And I don't think the problem kids would stick around, even if you did get them, which is probably a good thing because, you're trying to create the successful environment where everybody comes in, they have a good time, they have fun. Problem kids, they're not going to be able to set that up and establish that in that type of environment. So, I think also, yeah, you have great kids, I'm sure of that too, but I also think you're probably doing an awesome job of creating an environment that these kids will like actively look forward to showing up to every single day to train. I'd venture to say for some kids, it's probably the best part of their day. They probably look forward to that all week.
I hope so. And that's the goal. But like, I'm a super positive person. So like, I just in general. So even if dude, there's days, you know how much I work. There's times where
I know.
I wake up at 5 a.m., get my workout in, and I go straight over to Trogs. I'm working. I go straight from I'm still in my work uniform over there, changing the gym. Kids are coming in 10 minutes later. And then I'm there for the next 3 hours. It's crazy. But like, if I carry that with me, number one, I fucking love training. I love it. So that's the easy part. But like, if they come in and I'm just like, hey, what's up guys? You know what I mean? I never give them that energy. Like every kid that I work with, that we have our own handshake. And that's another part of that thing about making them feel special. And some of them are goofy as hell. But like when you come in and you start in the room and you see each kid leave and we're like, dab, like everybody has their own little thing. It's like, it's a community. It's like me and that kid have a connection with that thing. And I just want to, the huge thing is that I love it and whatever, but I always want to keep the positivity in there. And fortunately, well, sometimes those kids, like they have a long day at work and they're like, or a long day at school and they're tired and whatever, but like, that's not an excuse. I'm going to be positive and I'm going to pull it out of you. But that's just kind of how I am. And I don't know any other way to be, but fortunately they give me the energy sometimes back and helps, but I always just try to be really, really positive, like over the top positive, not cheerleader, toe the line of like being the hoop and holler guy, but you know what I mean?
And that has to show, some just real value to them for sure. Like, it's the best when you can get, like, I remember some of my football guys, we would all have, different handshakes or just giving. One thing I would do is I would stand outside the weight room, and as each one came in, I would say their name, dap them up, have them go into the weight room so they know accountability. I see them, they come in, let's go, we're getting this started. You mentioned your schedule, though, and we're also having a podcast that was based around work-life balance. How do you find that with yourself? You sound like you're a grinder, man. You said you like to go, 5 a.m., getting your own workout in, hitting your job, first one, then hitting what some would say your fun job, the real one. How do you find time to balance your own training, your nutrition, and also enjoy, what are you into outside of just training? What's your social life?
It's tough. And my girlfriend and I recently have had, some conversations about it. I'm still trying to figure it out. It's tough because I'm trying to grow this business and it's on my mind all the time. What can I do with this post or, this kid, that kid. And like, I've kind of adapted the trait from my dad. He's the same way. Like he'd do anything for anybody. And at times I think everybody outside of my girlfriend, sometimes I'll do anything for. And I think sometimes she gets kind of put on the back burner because I have all this stuff going on, and I need to do a better job with that. But the work-life balance stuff, it's just, I understand it is what it is right now. I have to log those hours. I have to work here, work there to get where I want to get. So hopefully, like, the light at the end of the tunnel is maybe a little more of a pulled back type of atmosphere where I have a gym that is, on site, that I'm right there. I can work with this person, that person, and that's my sole thing. And I don't have to work 3 jobs to, make ends meet and get by and do what I got to do. But honestly, like, I love that when people like rely on me, or people need, I like to feel needed, and like when I was in the Marines, it was one of those things where the guy to your left and right is relying on you. And I like being in that type of team atmosphere where I have a value to them. And so no matter what it is, if I'm at the bar, if I'm at the gym, if I'm at the other bar, if I'm working in the machine shop in York, whatever it is, I'm trying to help people and be, reliable.
See, and I think it's so important to me because this specific episode is literally going to air a week after the episode that Gerard just mentioned, and you haven't even listened to it, and you pretty much echoed back our same sentiments of like, you understand that what you got to do to get to where you want to go. I mean, you very clearly have that idea of that you want to have that gym, and to me, it's really not so much of a if you have it one day, it's just a when. And what it takes. And sometimes that work-life balance, sometimes that balance doesn't exist because you were like, shit, I got to get, like, this is the steps that it takes to get to where I want to go.
Yep.
And like, if I'm ever going to get there, I got to do it. And so I think being able to acknowledge that, as well as also acknowledging there's other parts of your life where it's like, okay, like I need to do a better job of this. Cause obviously that's something that we can all do. So
The default is just to work hard, it's
yeah.
just, you can always fall back on that. And that's just always what you got to, hang your hat on. But it is definitely tough because sometimes, I mean, I listen to these podcasts and I love hearing the stories about when they were starting out. Like when Dave Tate talks about when he was starting out and, there was shit dripping through the roof onto his computer. And like, dude, I love those stories because I feel like I'm living it right now. And I want to look back and be like, dude, you remember that day you had like no sleep? You did this, you went here, you did that, this happened. And like I said, you can be negative about it, or you can be positive about it.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is all part of the story. And, just keep your head down and just keep working hard. I mean, that's the default mindset.
I love that, man. It's all about that mindset. Austin's, big guy, Andy Frisella, has a great saying where it's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be overnight. We live in an instant gratification world right now. And so I think being able to promote like, hey, it's going to suck. It's going to be tough. Appreciate those days. Find value in them. And are you using them as negative fuel, or are you using them and taking them and putting them as positive fuel? Yep. And so that's awesome to hear from you, man. That's seriously, we don't hear that enough. And so I think that's a big reason why we wanted to get you on the show. So before we wrap up and everything, Eric, tell them all your info about your company, where they can find you, and where you're trying to take your company over the next coming year as we head into it.
So the company is Focused Physical Development. You can find it on Instagram at focused_physical_development.
If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm rocking a shirt. Hit up Eric to go buy your own Focused Physical Development gear and apparel.
Yep. And then starting up a new thing here. Kind of, you're the first people I've really told about it outside of my family. It's going to be called Second Shift Barbell Club. That's starting up that Instagram here soon. Got some shirts ordered, new logo. It's going to be more of like an apparel kind of side gig. Kind of another type of source of revenue. Kind of create another community more widespread than just Focused. More of a, kind of that 9-to-5er that finds that time to get to the gym. And so, the Second Shift Barbell Club just kind of, is painting the picture of that guy that continues to work out even though he's got his other job, and that grinder type person that the blue collar type guy that, makes it happen because he has to.
That's so important. I mean, that's a lot of us, a lot of us, that's the type of stuff that nobody ever focuses on. Sometimes that's it's not easy. I mean, it gets automatic after a while, but to go work all day and then be like, oh, damn, gotta still go to the gym and train for 2.5, 3 hours some days. Like,
Yeah.
but you just gotta do what you gotta do to get it done. So, well, it's been absolutely a blast having you on here. I'm so glad you were our first interview. I mean, this is so fun. And hopefully, we'll get to a point where we circle back like a year later and we have you on again and talk about what's changed in the last year. Like, where are you at now? What are you doing? I think that would be awesome. Or, hey, I know Eric's actually talking about doing a podcast. He didn't mention that.
Yeah,
this is
that'd
going to
be
be my
awesome.
way of peer pressuring him into doing it. So by speaking it into existence, that we will be on that podcast one day, maybe.
Heck
But,
yeah.
but
I will always make time for you guys, no matter what.
Oh, dude, I appreciate that. I mean, seriously though, go follow him on Instagram. You also have a YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, just started it up. It's under Eric Schwartz. I think some bullshit comedian pops up at first, but I am on there, Eric Schwartz.
Yeah, I mean, I will have all of his social media and his YouTube linked in the video description on YouTube, as well as Spotify, Anchor, and Apple, that we are also apparently now on, which is sick. I never got that email, but I know, I'm so stoked. So please, if you like this interview and if you liked any of our episodes ever, please like, share, follow, subscribe, let us know. Go hit up Eric. Are you doing any like online coaching right now at all, Eric?
Yeah, I am during the quarantine right now. I'm writing programs for people. I do have some free programs that I released on my Instagram. There's a hypertrophy program and then a strength-based program. And they're actually like music themed, which is sort of weird. The strength one is Wu-Tang Clan.
I remember
themed,
that. Yeah.
And then the hypertrophy one was Grateful Dead themed. Just something different. If you're doing the same thing as everybody else, you're not really going to stand out. So it's something a little bit different. They have the names of the exercises are kind of cool. They're similar to like Pen Paper Strength app. If you guys are familiar with them, they do ones like Beach Season and the Return of Dr. Jacked. It's kind of like a themed program. It's all handwritten stuff. It's pretty different, but good programming.
That's awesome. So everybody, make sure you go check out Eric's page. He's got awesome, great content, and I know he's got a lot more on the way. Once again, my name's Austin. Gerard's with me again.
As always, the Frenchman. You can catch us at Iron Breed Performance and our personal Instagrams.
And thanks for hanging in there. This was a blast. We'll see you again next time. Thank you for listening to the Iron Breed Podcast.